In today's Closing Bill Exchange, we have Michael Guyad with us here on set from Pension Partners, Peter Costa, CNBC market analyst from Empire Executions, Lee Munson from Portfolio Asset Management, and our own Rick Santelli. Good to see everybody. Peter, let me kick it up with you. What are you seeing in this final hour here in terms of flow? How do you think this market goes?
Well, for the close, I'm still seeing it for sale, but that I don't think is going to mean anything as we move forward. I'm still trying to wrap my arms around the wheatgrass sandwich that I had for lunch today, as opposed to that last segment. But I'm refocusing back on the market now that I've digested that.
Yeah.
No, I think that, you know what, I think it's very possible. I don't think there's that much, really won't take that much for the market to close higher. We'll wait and see. I haven't seen anything to tell me that it's going to. The flows haven't really changed much, and we'll see what happens in the next hour.
Michael Guyad, last time you were with us, we made much of the fact that the great skeptic of stocks had turned to stocks and away from bonds, but then you went back to bonds.
Friday, there was enough deterioration pre-Cyprus news to push our models in our mutual fund and separate accounts back to bonds. And bonds this week have outperformed. It's not the Walking Dead stock market. It's the Honey Badger stock market. The stock market don't give a you-know-what about Cyprus. Now, the bond market clearly is still concerned here, and I think there is a fear trade that's happening. You still have a lot of things which don't look right internally. You still have small caps which are weak. You still have dividend sectors which are outperforming. And emerging markets can't get a bid. That still is probably the next fat pitch. But until we get some kind of real persistent outperformance, I really think caution has to be warranted.
So you remain defensive then?
For now.
You say emerging markets can't get a bid?
They can't outperform the S&P. You've seen clear strength in the QE countries of Japan and the U.S.
Yeah.
Everything else has been underperforming.
Let me get everybody's take on the transport average. Lee Munson, what do you make of what went on with FedEx and the transports this week? For a long time, we kept seeing the transports and the industrial side-by-side rallying. They've broken down. Do you worry about that?
I don't, because you have to remember, Maria, since the beginning of the year, the transports have been up about 4 or 5% against the S&P, so they're just coming down a little bit. I think it's just a little profit taking. I'm not concerned that investors should be worried that the transports are going to be negative this week. It doesn't mean you go back to Dow theory and it's the end of the rally. So I ignore that for this week at least.
I agree.
Rick who said that, Peter?
Me. I agree totally.
Yeah.
About the transports.
About the transports, I think this is just a blip in the, in our year move.
You're hanging in there with
absolutely.
More all-time highs down the road.
Yes.
Okay. Rick Santelli, they are going late into the night with the negotiations in Nicosia. How much will the markets respond one way or the other to whether they get a bailout or not there in Cyprus? How important is that story right now to us?
Well, I think if Cyprus doesn't get resolved, I think that becomes a bigger negative story. I don't think it's catastrophic, but I do think you'll continue to see, for example, the distance between R10s and boons, R10s and gilts. I think you'll see some of those continue to widen as the safe harbor in Europe gets to be a deeper pocket. Now, if it gets resolved, I think some of those spreads reverse a bit, but many on this trading floor think that the damage is already done. The idea that they would take people's money that was an insured deposit scenario has done damage that's hard to remove. So I think that it continues to be somewhat of a deal no matter how it turns out. But I think having said all of that and looking at the stocks at these levels, what really hits me is if you look at the last 2 months, basically Treasury 10-year has been in a closing yield range of 185 to 285, 20 basis points. And at 191 now, we're in the lower third of that range. So even the stock market, for example, is getting trumped a bit. Its strength usually is higher yields. The anxieties in Europe are real, and it's just a question of how much more real they get regarding the outcome for Cyprus.
Michael Guyad, you like bonds. How much lower could those yields go?
I wouldn't be surprised to see us break the 189 level, break 3% on the 30-year. There's a real complacency and conviction. We're under this belief here that every single time there's a problem, the central banks are going to come in and bail them out, and maybe they will. But you have to be cautious of a universal belief. It's not where the payout is highest. The payout is actually quite high now. I'm betting that Cyprus ends up being a much bigger problem, not because Cyprus is a big part of the Eurozone. We know it's not, but because it sets a precedent for other countries.
Are you expecting money to come out of bonds and go find a home in stocks? I mean, everyone's trying to figure out this great rotation that isn't. Do you think it is at some point?
I think it's a longer-term theme, but this discussion about rising yields, I think, has to be tempered a bit because every day that goes by, the holders of capital are getting older. and that means that from an asset allocation perspective, there is going to be a lot of sticky money still in bonds. So at the margin, you'll see it, but I think it's a little bit overhyped relative to demographics globally.
Meanwhile, Lee Munson, even with all this nervousness, your message to bears is that all you've got?
I mean, is that all you have? I mean, we went last week just to sort of a neutral allocation. So if, people had a 60-40 mix, we just went to that mix. One thing I'm really looking forward to over these next few weeks, if we do get some freak out on Cyprus, I can't wait to trade my treasuries in for equity over the next few weeks to get overweight into the stock market. So any type of correction we may get this year, I'm going to go from sort of a neutral weighting to overweighting, trade those treasuries in. That's what people should do this weekend, Bill. They should look at their portfolios and say, am I in my classic allocation? Because if you are, then you don't have to worry about if there's going to be a correction or if there won't be. You just, why hassle? It's Friday. Why do we want to try to time the market right now?
Well, Michael will be happy to buy those treasuries from you when you're ready to sell.
I can't. Now I know who I'm going to trade with. I can't wait to give them to him.
There you go.
Peter, what about earnings? Are you worried about earnings coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so? I mean, does FedEx and Oracle indicate something to come in terms of the first quarter?
You would think so, Marie. You would think that that's a sort of an indicator for the next quarter. But, I'm still relatively positive on earnings. I don't think we're going to have a gangbuster quarter. And I thought last quarter we sort of did because I think everything was so tempered down. I think we'll probably have something very, very in line to what everybody's expecting. So I don't think there's going to be any major surprises either in the direction. But, that being said, that still means people are making money. These companies are still earning money. They may not be growing at, 13% annual, but they still are growing and they still are putting away cash. So to me, that's still a positive sign long term in the market.
So the FedExes and the Oracles are special situations in your view? They disappointed big time this week.
Well, they disappointed, but I think the expectation was maybe a little bit too high for them, and anytime you look at Oracle always seems to disappoint me every quarter. You would think this is one of the greatest companies in this country, and every time you turn around, it's doing something else that's kind of like you scratch your head. FedEx on the other case, the other side is, you saw that in the transports. That is a disappointment, and I'm a little surprised by that. But I think that's a short-term thing. I don't think that's a long-term thing at all.
In terms of longer term, you think this economy improves second half, or you think it slows down?
No, I think as a matter of fact, we'll probably in the second quarter you'll start seeing slow growth. But I do think as the summer winds, goes through, we're going to start seeing some growth again. I do think that by the end of the year we're going to be not a lot higher, but I definitely think we're going to be at all-time highs as the year goes on. Probably the end of the summer, third quarter, going into the fourth quarter.
Okay.
I mean, I'm positive.
Bill, because the S&P Capital IQ estimates call for 0.6% growth the first quarter,
yes,
and then it goes up to 7%. So they're expecting profits to actually re-accelerate second half of the year.
Really backloading there. Lee Munson, you're the only outside guest buying stocks here. What are you buying here?
I'm just focusing when I need to get some more exposure right now. I'm focusing first on emerging markets. Just they've lagged year to date. I think that they can outperform by December 31st. So I like the emerging markets to add more money today. I also would say add more money to the S&P 500 today. The only place I wouldn't add more money is, say, the IFA or Europe and Japan. I think you can wait to try to find some more value there. So there's places you can put your money. And hey, if you want to buy some treasuries, go ahead and buy them. It's part of a diversified portfolio. Don't feel bad if you're a bull and need some treasuries.
Okay, before we go, you got the 6-box sitting there. How's your bracket doing? Anybody pick Harvard last night?
No. I did have Ole Miss, though.
Harvard was the only winner I had.
You picked Harvard?
UNM,
and
baby,
Lobos. And all my other picks lost. Yeah, I did have Harvard.
I had Ole Miss, baby. They won. They beat Wisconsin. That's why I'm wearing my tie.
There you go. Ole Miss making it over the Badgers there. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Good weekend.
Appreciate it.